There is something the food industry never wanted you to know, something that existed for thousands of years. Something that fed entire civilizations and was in every kitchen of every home before factories, laboratories, and shiny packages with expiration dates arrived. And what they did was so simple, so quiet, that almost no one noticed. They convinced you that you needed to buy something you had always been able to create yourself. They convinced you that yeast, that microscopic living organism that has fermented human bread for more than 10,000 years, had to come in a foil packet made in an industrial plant with a printed expiration date and be replaced every time you ran out. And meanwhile, in some kitchens around the world, there are glass jars with live wild yeast that have remained active for decades, some for more than 50 years. One of the most famous in San Francisco has been active since the 19th century. None of them has ever needed a supermarket. What you are going to learn today is not a recipe. It is something much more important than that. It is recovering a capacity that was always yours, and that was taken from you so slowly that you did not even feel it. Think about March 2020. The stores started to empty. First toilet paper, then rice, then flour, and suddenly, in a matter of days, something no one expected to be missing disappeared. Yeast. Those little silver packets that were always there in the same aisle at the same price suddenly did not exist. The shelves were empty, and millions of people who wanted to bake bread at home, who had flour, who had water, who had time for the first time in years, could not do it. Not because they lacked skill, not because they lacked motivation, but because they had delegated a living biological function to a supply chain that collapsed in 72 hours. And that was the most revealing part of all. Most people did not realize that they were not just buying an ingredient. They were buying access to a living process that used to be maintained at home. 1 week of shortage was enough to make it clear that a modern kitchen can be full of things and still depend completely on one small and fragile link. The people who had a jar of wild yeast in their kitchen kept baking without interruption, without depending on anyone. And that was not a minor advantage. It was the difference between eating fresh bread every week or waiting weeks for trucks to restock supermarkets. That already happened once, and it will happen again. Not necessarily with yeast. It could be with something else, because that is how modern supply chains work. They are efficient when everything goes well, and when something fails, they fail completely, and all at once without warning. Now, beyond independence, there is a reason that most people do not know, and it completely changes the way you see the bread you eat every day. And to understand that, you first have to understand what commercial yeast actually is and what it does, or rather, what it does not do inside your body. The yeast you buy at the supermarket is a single strain, one species cultivated in sterile industrial conditions, designed for one purpose: to produce carbon dioxide as quickly as possible, so the dough rises in the shortest time possible. That is all it does. It has no bacteria, no biological diversity, and it does not perform any metabolic process beyond producing gas quickly. Industrial bakers adopted it at the end of the 19th century because it was fast and predictable. And what they lost in that trade-off was not fully understood until food science caught up with them 100 years later. Because dough can rise and still not have gone through the full transformation the grain needs. That is the difference between bread looking ready and bread actually being prepared in a way that is gentler on the body. When you make bread with commercial yeast, the dough rises in 90 minutes. The bread is ready quickly, but inside that wheat grain, there is something that never got deactivated. It is called phytic acid. It is an anti-nutrient that naturally exists in all grains and its function is to protect the grain. The problem is that when that acid enters your digestive system, it binds to minerals, iron, magnesium, zinc, and calcium, and carries them out of the body before you can absorb them. You eat the bread. You feel like you are nourishing yourself. But an important part of the nutrients that should stay in you leaves instead. And that is a point many people never hear explained clearly. Feeling full is not the same as properly benefiting from what you eat. You can feel satisfied and at the same time absorb less than you think. Fast bread solves the rising of the dough. Slow fermentation solves much more than that. Slow fermentation with wild yeast changes that completely. During that long process, the lactic acid bacteria that live alongside wild yeast produce enzymes that break down phytic acid and neutralize it. And when that happens, the minerals in the grain become bioavailable. Your body can actually absorb them. It is not a marginal benefit. It is the difference between eating something that nourishes you and eating something that only fills you up. But there is more. Slow fermentation also breaks down complex carbohydrates and a significant portion of the gluten present in the dough. That makes the bread much easier to digest. It produces a lower glycemic index, which means sugar enters the bloodstream gradually instead of causing a spike. In simple terms, that means bread does not just change in flavor or texture. It also changes the way your body receives it. And that is why so many people notice a difference when they return to bread fermented with real time. Studies published by Colorado State University, based on multiple clinical trials, confirmed that traditionally fermented bread has measurably different metabolic effects on the body compared with bread made with industrial yeast. And here is something worth stopping to think about. How many people do you know today who say they feel bad after eating bread? Bloating, heaviness, that uncomfortable feeling an hour after a sandwich? 2 generations ago, that was not a common complaint. The ingredients in bread did not change substantially. What changed was the fermentation. What was removed was the slow biological process that had made bread digestible for the human stomach for 10,000 years. And what arrived in its place was a fast industrial process designed for factories and profit margins, one that produces bread in 90 minutes and skips all the steps that actually mattered for your gut. Now you understand why this matters. It is not nostalgia. It is not fashion. It is biology. And the best part is that you can do it yourself at home with a potato, water, and 3 days of patience. Wild yeast is in the air around you right now. It is on the surfaces of your kitchen, in the flour, and on the skin of fruit. What a starter culture does is create an environment so favorable for that yeast that it quickly colonizes, multiplies, and pushes out everything else. And of all the substrates people have used over the centuries to achieve that, potato water is one of the oldest and most effective. Potatoes have an extraordinary concentration of amylopectin starch. When you boil a potato, that starch gelatinizes and seeps into the water, leaving you with a warm, slightly sweet liquid full of complex carbohydrates and minerals that wild yeast needs to thrive. Potato water feeds the yeast colony more completely and more steadily than sugar alone. It also delays the buildup of acid that can kill a young culture before it establishes itself properly. That is what makes this method so useful. It is not just about catching yeast from the environment. It is about giving it a stable beginning, enough food, and the right conditions so the correct colony becomes strong before the culture spoils or weakens. A baking textbook published in Boston in 1884 already documented that potato yeast rises faster and keeps longer without turning sour than other handmade cultures. Food science confirmed the same thing a century later, and the bread it produces does not taste like sour sourdough. That surprises many people. Classic sourdough has that characteristic tangy flavor that comes from high bacterial activity in flour-based cultures. A culture started with potato water develops wild yeast with much less of that bacterial dominance, producing something that smells slightly sweet and yeasty. The bread you get has more body and complexity than commercial bread, but without that acidic edge. It is closer to what traditional European bread tasted like before industrial production standardized everything. This is how you make it. Peel a large potato. The skin matters, so do not skip it, because it can have pesticide residue that interferes with yeast development. Boil the peeled potato in enough water until it is completely soft, about 30 to 40 minutes. Check the center with a fork. If you feel resistance, keep cooking it. An undercooked potato leaves raw starch that feeds the wrong microorganisms. Remove the potato and set it aside. Pour the cooking water into a clean glass jar and let it cool until it is warm, not hot. Hot liquid kills yeast instantly, and this is the step most people rush and then wonder why nothing happens. Mash the potato and add it back into the jar with the cooled water. The mashed potato at the bottom gives the developing colony a concentrated starch base to feed on while it gets established. Cover the jar with a cloth or paper towel secured with a rubber band, not a lid. It needs to breathe. Place it in a warm spot, away from direct sunlight. Within 24 to 48 hours, you will see bubbles. That is the yeast working. After 2 to 3 days of visible activity, your culture is ready for baking. At this stage, you are not looking for industrial perfection. You are looking for clear signs of life, bubbles, a pleasant smell, and steady activity. Once you understand that, the process stops feeling uncertain and starts becoming easy to read. To use it, pour off the starchy liquid from the top and use it in place of water in any bread recipe. As a general starting point, use about 240 milliliters of active potato culture liquid. About 1 cup for every 360 grams of flour, around 3 cups in your recipe. This is an approximate equivalent to what commercial yeast would do in a standard loaf, because wild yeast is less concentrated and more variable than lab-cultivated yeast. You may need to adjust a little, depending on how active your particular culture is. A very bubbly and vigorous culture can handle a bit more flour. A younger one may work better with a slightly higher ratio of culture to flour. When in doubt, lean toward more culture rather than less. The dough will tell you whether it is rising well during that extended period. And that is another important difference. With industrial yeast, almost everything depends on the clock. With a living culture, you also learn to watch the dough. You learn to observe volume, smell, and movement. It is a slower way, yes, but also a more real way to make bread. The fermentation time is different. Expect rising times to be 2 or 3 times longer than with commercial yeast. But that extra time is not an inconvenience. That extra time is exactly where all the health benefits and all the flavor we have talked about are created. To keep it active indefinitely, you do not throw it away after each use. You boil another potato. You add the cooled water and a little mashed potato to what is left in the jar, and it regenerates in a matter of hours. Store it in the refrigerator between baking sessions, and it will remain dormant and stable for weeks. Take it out, let it come to room temperature for a few hours, and it comes back to life. That means you are not starting from zero every time. You are preserving a living, discrete, useful tool, ready to activate whenever you need it. There is something else worth mentioning. Unlike a flour-based sourdough starter, that must be fed constantly with fresh flour and therefore grows and grows until you have to throw part of it away so it does not overflow. This potato water culture does not work that way. You do not add flour to it. You regenerate it by boiling a new potato and adding the water and a little mashed potato to the jar. There is no built-in waste problem with this method. But if your jar ever has more culture than you need before your next bake, do not throw it away. Mix in 2 to 4 tablespoons of flour, about 15 to 30 grams. With the leftover culture, add a pinch of salt, and you have everything you need for something people do not forget the first time they try it. The culture by itself is only a thin, starchy liquid. The flour is what transforms it into something you can cook. What comes out of the pan is a kind of slightly tangy flatbread with crispy edges, halfway between a crepe and a buttermilk pancake. Add sliced green onion and a drizzle of olive oil, and you have something that could come out of a good restaurant. The leftover is not waste. It is a second recipe that takes 30 seconds to start. Before finishing, there are 2 practical things that make the difference between success and failure. First, always use filtered or chlorine-free water at every stage of the process. Chlorine in tap water actively inhibits yeast growth, and it is one of the most common reasons people try this and see nothing happen in the jar. Second, if at any point your culture smells genuinely bad, not pleasantly fermented, but rotten, start over with a clean jar. A healthy culture smells alive. It should be something you want to bring close to your nose, not something you want to move away from. There is no need to complicate it further. If the culture shows good activity, smells good, and responds, you are on the right track. If it looks weak or smells bad, restart it. It is that simple. A jar of wild potato yeast costs you 1 potato and 3 days. Once you have it, it does not expire. It does not run out. It improves with time, produces bread that is measurably more nutritious and easier to digest than anything made with an industrial packet, and gives you real independence from a supply chain that has already proven it can fail you. They replace 10,000 years of living fermentation with a foil packet and a marketing campaign, because you cannot charge someone every week for something they already have alive in a jar on their counter. Now you know it, and you are not going to forget it. If this kind of forgotten knowledge interests you, subscribe to Botanical Vault and join us in the next one.